During this segment, we're going to talk about a general introduction to Clostridioides difficile infection. So what is C. difficile? I'm going to take us back to our textbook years, and we remember that C. difficile is a gram-positive, spore-forming, anaerobic rod. And there are two main phases of C. difficile infection: the spore phase and the vegetative phase. The vegetative phase is the phase that you probably thought about when you clicked on the link to learn more about C. difficile, because the vegetative phase is the phase that stimulates the diarrheal syndrome most commonly associated with C. difficile. The vegetative phase is susceptible to gastric acid and susceptible to alcohol-based hand sanitizers. Plainly stated, when it comes in contact with these things, it gets wiped out. Alternatively, the spore phase is resistant to gastric acid and resistant to alcohol-based hand sanitizers. So when it comes in contact with these things, it is unaltered. And the spore phase is like a cocoon that can last on dry surfaces up to 6 to 8 months and still remain viable. This is the reason that C. difficile can spread so extensively within healthcare systems. How does C. difficile actually infect us? Classically, what happens is we swallow the spore phase. It's resistant to our gastric acid, gets through our gastric acid into our small bowel, where there's a process called germination. Germination is the process where we convert the spore phase to the vegetative phase. The vegetative phase then multiplies, divides, and multiplies some more as it builds steam heading towards the colon. But I think the colon is a brilliant organ, and it is. The colon has its own defense system, independent of the blood-borne defense system that can protect it. And that defense system is something called colonization resistance. These are the proportions of bacteria within the colon that can fight off C. difficile infection. What classically weakens colonization resistance? Amoxicillin, ampicillin, clarithromycin, fluoroquinolones, and cephalosporins. We weaken colonization resistance, creating an environment that's welcoming for the C. difficile, and the C. difficile can proliferate and cause symptoms. It's very important to remember, though, that the bulk of patients that present with C. difficile have diarrhea as their presenting symptom. However, patients can present with constipation, ileus, and even rarely the most devastating complication, a megacolon.